Dr. Mike's smart and makes up exercises of his own, and he's avant-garde, and he's a revolutionary, and isn't he great? Curls. I prefer to use the whole name, otherwise it's rude. Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for RP Strength, and today's topic is about, as the French say, la révolution. Oui, mais non. Maybe they're not in the mood for it anymore. The French have an interesting history with revolution, and so do I. How come, Dr. Mike? What are you talking about? I have personally experienced a revolution in my biceps training. And as far as revolutions go, bicep training revolutions are really important. We got the United States Revolutionary War against the oppression of the English. That's right here. The bicep revolution, right just beneath it in importance, but very important. French Revolution, greatly forward China, all this somewhere down there, in an irrelevant place compared to your biceps. So what the hell was this revolution, and could you stand to benefit from a revolving with me? Yes, as a matter of fact, your next assignment is to go watch the entire last part of the trilogy, Matrix Revolutions. Now that you're back and hate yourself because that movie was terrible and went nowhere, let's talk about biceps. Here's how I used to train them. What I'm going to tell you may not be controversial at all. I used to do cable curls. I used to do barbell curls, easy curls, dumbbell curls, all combinations of variations thereof. And I did most of them standing because real men stand when they curl. So I thought. And working on my way at the time to becoming a real man, I thought such things were important. Now, I did the things, I trained the biceps, and as you can probably tell, I trained them in a way that's oddly not unique and similar to how 90% of people train their biceps. Here were my results and experiences. I gained a lot of axial fatigue from standing. Axial fatigue is fatigue generated by the tension required to keep your spine upright. And anytime you have tension through the spine or tension to curve the spine, axial fatigue accumulates. It's the kind of fatigue that means your squats are still doing well, but after a bunch of deadlifting, you try to pick up the bar, and even bending over is hard, and you can barely pick up anything. You're like, I don't know, my legs feel fine. My arms feel fine. My back, if I had to do pull-ups or rows, feels fine. But there's something just feeling like it's crushing me, and I hate it, and it lasts a while. Here's the thing. Bicep curls are not very heavy. But if you stand up to do all of them, especially as you arc the curls out in front of you, your back has to lean back for you, activating the spinal erector musculature. For me, I literally got low back pumps, mid back pumps, and it would definitely fatigue me. And it was, at best, it was a nuisance. I was like, damn it, man, like these curls beat my ass, not even locally, just systemically from the axial fatigue perspective, more than I was interested in admitting. And the stimulus to fatigue ratio, thus, for almost all curls, if you include axial fatigue for me, was just not that great. So I was putting in a lot of work. I wasn't getting a ton out of it. It gets worse. Axial fatigue is dope if at least the raw stimulus magnitude is very high. So if you're trying to grow, for example, huge legs, and you're doing heavy squats, which have a lot of axial fatigue generated, deep squats will grow big ass legs, period. The problem with me is that my raw stimulus is, very, very high for legs and the squats. But while I had decent fatigue in my biceps of various curls, just there wasn't a lot happening. The stimulus proxies weren't shouting at me all the time in just a few sets. My tension, perceiving my tension in the bicep was like tension, and especially at the top. I don't know, the bottom where I'd love some tension, where it's a deep stretch. I don't really feel any. The burn was pretty cool at higher reps, but it would burn for just a second or two. And then I'd have to put the weights down because I couldn't get a full range of motion anymore because the middle part is the sticking point. So not even as much burn as I would have liked. The pumps were decent, I guess, but I really almost never had what I would call an amazing bicep pump up until La Révolution, which I will describe shortly. And it was kind of like blarg, man. Almost never got delayed onset muscle soreness. And it's kind of like in my triceps, in my chest, in my quads, in my lats, muscles that grow more easily for me and have been characteristically more impressive on my physique. They all get all these tension and is crazy. The burn is crazy. The pump is crazy. The delayed onset muscle soreness is crazy. And it just wasn't for these bicep movements. So even the raw stimulus magnitude, which would be worth the fatigue if it was high, it wasn't even high. So really not ideal. And I noticed, like I just said earlier, I'd have to stop sets due to strength deficit at a mid-range. I could have done a lot more bottom end partials if I wanted, but the problem was even that wasn't cool. So I basically go to failure here and then be like, okay, I could do like 20 of these, but also there's almost no loading at the stretch here at the bottom. Partials can't be done in name only. Partials need to be loaded. So if you do partials at a lengthened range, which is awesome for growth, you have to load that range. And as you go lower in the bicep curl standing, in any form, barbell or cable or easy bar or dumbbell, you actually just get less and less tension as you go lower, which sucks. And it's backwards at best, worst backwards at best, not remotely ideal. So it wasn't great. Like I said, no huge pumps, no target muscle fatigue. Awesome forearm stimulus in some of the barbell curls, but like, man, I'm just not doing these for forearms. What the hell am I doing wrong? And what I would do is I would do lots of sets of these to make up for the low raw stimulus magnitude, because raw stimulus magnitude is how much growth that movement is going to cause for how many sets. If it's got a huge raw stimulus magnitude, that means it's going to grow a lot in just a few sets. I do a lot more sets to get that total stimulus up to something that would actually grow my arms. And to believe it or not, it didn't grow my arms nearly as much as I would have wanted. Now, a few years back, in the last few years, I had some experiences in the gym which got me thinking. And then I looked at the scientific literature and it got me thinking even more. And then I unsheathed my sword, ran up to the top of an armor personnel carrier in the middle of a capital in Europe and said, "Le viva, le bicep," and pointed my sword in the sky. And of course, my fellow co-revolutionaries stormed the Capitol, as all good revolutions end up doing. Scott, let's see if we can get ourselves banned on YouTube for this shit. Like, what is he talking about? Biceps. So here's the experience that got me thinking. I at first tried to regularly use incline dumbbell curls, which do allow you, by leaning back, to expose yourself at a more lengthened tension position. And I loved them. And they gave me a little bit of late onset soreness for the first time ever in my biceps. They got me big ass pumps. I could really feel the tension. It was fucking awful in a great way. So I was like, okay, this is really awesome. Then I got my hands on a free motion machine, which is one of the greatest machines anyone can have in a gym because it does like a trillion things, most of them very well. I reversed myself in the free motion machine. So I was doing reverse bicep curls in the free motion machine, which means I was generating maximum tension at the stretch and then the least amount of tension at the peak contraction. And I loved these curls even more. Reliable, small amount, but reliable delayed onset muscle soreness, amazing pumps, amazing tension perception, amazing burn, very little elbow. I never really got any kind of connective tissue problem with regular curls, but these were just awesome on my elbows too, even more so. And I'm like, holy crap, like, it's weird for me as Mr. Barbells and free weights and all that stuff, something I used to identify with a bit more in my past. It's weird for me to be the guy that's like, yeah, like the free motion machine is just superior for training biceps. For me, seemingly categorically, that was strange to accept, but it was a reality that I had to accept. Preconceived notions don't get you jacked. Doing effective shit gets you jacked. Scott, you looking around a lot. What's wrong? You good? What's wrong with you? I'm trying to make money out here for us, baby. You out here doing nonsense, trying to get in my way. Swear to God. Folks, we're looking for a new video guy. Your name has to be Scott, and you have to be literally Scott the video guy. But if you're that guy, show up to work, God damn it. All right. Now, recently, just a couple months ago, I tried a new exercise, which looks weird. It looks weird. And you have to lie down on the ground at the gym. I know, strange, but people already do that for push-ups and crunches. Why not for another exercise? I started doing lying cable curls. Now, lying cable curls don't really do a ton for generating a ton of tension, at the stretch. So they don't do that a ton. They don't do the long muscle length thing super well. But because you're lying down, your spine no longer has to support your body weight plus the weight of the curl. It just supports the weight of the curl. And I got to tell you, you don't curl that much. Neither do I. So it feels way more amazing. So I was able to, with lying curls, take that axial fatigue and just almost eliminate it, which was like, wow, like I can do lots of sets of curls. Now, one of the things I like to do with curls is myo-rep match sets. Get 20 reps close to failure on your first set. And the next 2 or 3 or 4 sets, how many sets you have programmed for that day, you do as many myo-rep approaches to failure as it takes to get 20 total reps in each set. So it could be like 20 in the first one, and the second one is 12, then rest, then 6, then rest, then 2, then you're done. Rest for a minute or 2, and then you go again, 20, however many little mini breaks you need, getting close to failure, resting 5 to 10 seconds and going. With axial movements like barbell and dumbbell curls, standing curls, shit gets really old really fast. You're standing around for a long time and a bunch of that's curling and a bunch of that's just standing. And maybe you can sit for 5 to 10 seconds, but really there's nowhere to sit. There's no consolation. It sucks. But with lying curls, my reps become super fucking easy because you just rack the weight. You're seated up for a second. 5 to 10 seconds later, you grab the weight, you lean back, and then you go again. The amount of systemic fatigue, cardiovascular fatigue, neurological fatigue that you accumulate curling in a lying position is way, way, way lower. It's just lower than standing. But if you think it through, the objective stimulus to the biceps is either the same or, because you're much more relaxed and much more energetic, even superior to standing curls, in which you have to contend with two things. One is staying erect, which can be hard for a lot of folks. Scott, I wish we had pills to promote as one of our sponsors on the channel, because what a hell of an ad transition right there that we missed. In any case, get your shit sorted. But you may find that the lying cable curl is just superior, because once the axial fatigue is essentially removed, man, the shit just gets better kind of all around. Now, most recently, it's been kind of a 3-part journey. Incline dumbbell curls, I was like, okay. Free motion, I was like, okay. 4-part journey. Part 3 was lying cable curls, and I was like, okay, why didn't I think of this earlier? This is dumb. Obviously, other people have thought of this. I have not invented any exercises here, folks, but it's kind of just trying to stick to traditional movements. And tradition leads to 2 things. Sometimes really awesome things that we miss, and sometimes really terrible things that we, thank God, every day are not around anymore. Old style curling might be a little bit of both, but maybe more of the latter for me than I wanted to admit. Most recently, my most recent thing that kicked off la revolution and made me have an idea to make this video for you guys is that I tried weeks ago lying dumbbell curls. Now, this exercise looks arguably as absurd as lying cable curls, but you lie down on a bench. Maybe you put the seat of the bench up just a little bit to give yourself kind of a little pillow, maybe not. And you just lie down. And you can really spread your arms as wide or narrow as you like, but as long as they clear the bench, narrow is fine, and a curl grip. You take dumbbells and you curl all the way down, maybe even gently touching the ground and waiting for a second, and curl all the way up. I did this, and after 2 sets, I got delayed onset muscle soreness that lasted for 3 days in my biceps, which to me happens once every 5 years. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is amazing. Humongous pump, just unreal tension, just all the best things. But I was like, yeah, okay, novelty's a thing, so maybe the DOMs won't come back, and it'll just be another great exercise. I did it again and again and again, and every single fucking time, 2 to 3 MyRep match sets, I got delayed onset muscular soreness. And a few other folks of mine that I correspond with on the internet, some would call them friends, but I believe Mr. Nick Shaw pays these people to interact with me, other bodybuilders and such, they've experimented as well with the lying dumbbell curls, and they're like, bro, this shit is fire as fuck, and I'm getting reliable delayed onset muscle soreness, which I believe has something to do with growth. But at the very least, it can tell us about growth that, look, doing more, probably not the answer. Doing less could be the answer, but this is definitely a robust stimulus. If something gets you sore for 3 or 4 days repeatedly over and over, 99 problems, but stimulating the muscle is absolutely not one of them. For me, it was such a big deal for biceps. I had a really hard time getting in there and stimulating that at some point, if I find an exercise like this that works so well, I'm like, holy shit, this makes stuff really, really interesting. And the raw stimulus magnitude for these things are crazy. It's like hamstrings. Raw stimulus magnitude is stiff-legged deadlifts. Like you do 2-3 sets and you're completely fucked up. Amazing stimulus to fatigue ratio as well. There's no joint stuff. Joints feel totally fine. Heads up, if you want to try this exercise, make sure your shoulder joints are in good working order and warm up. There's 0 spinal loading by definition because you're lying down. There are really no synergist muscles. Maybe front delt is kind of a static stabilizer, maybe a little bit of a dynamic stabilizer. But as far as most prime movers are concerned, it's really just your forearm flexors, mostly your biceps. And this is a big deal. That means this exercise, you do it and you're like, it feels hard for the biceps. It doesn't really feel hard for anything else. A set or 2 later, you're like, dude, holy fucking shit, I'm pumped out of my mind. What the hell is going on? And they're like, oh, that was cool. And you go home and you wake up the next day, you're like, holy shit, my biceps are sore. And it happens over and over. It's unbelievable. So I said 2 things earlier. 1, had some personal experience revelations lately or over the past several years. And then 2, I looked at the science again, as we tend to do. And the recent accumulated data on range of motion say a couple things. They pretty unequivocally say the top end partials, if you're just going to do curls from here to here, they suck. They're the worst possible kind of training. So that blows. Now, also this recent training says that full range of motion is fine. It's totally cool. But partials at a bottom end range are fucking dope. They work, but they don't work as well everywhere, because if you're doing partials in a bottom range on a standing bicep curl, you're essentially in the range in which the loading is kind of nominal at most of the time. And the more of a stretch you get, the less load you get. So it kind of cancels itself out. So there's a better way to think about this. It is, yes, the bottom end partials work great, but what really is the fundamental underlying thing that works is generating high degrees of muscle tension at a lengthened muscle position versus a shortened muscle position. So that means emphasizing the literal stretch in exercises is awesome, but where tension occurs at the stretch. If you think about a pull-up, right? A normal pull-up, at the very bottom, when you're hanging, you can feel that shit ripping your lats open. Amazing. But like at the bottom of a barbell curl, you're like, feel my biceps. I could just stand here forever. My biceps aren't even sort of involved. But if you're on the bottom of a very deep incline curl, if you're in a free motion curl, for sure, if you're in a lying dumbbell curl, not only do you get the mega stretch, but you get crazy tension, the craziest tension of the movement, typically around that stretch area. That, keeping the most of the training at long muscle lengths, and even if the very top part of the movement you don't do, or the very top part's easy, and then you do the hard stuff, and the top part's easy and you do the hard stuff, either way, you get amazing results this way. It is just superior from all the laboratory evidence in terms of growth. So I had this personal experience. So we knew theoretically that long muscle lengths and stretch under load was a thing that probably caused hypertrophy in animals and in humans from older modeling. So we knew that. And we had never skipped the stretch in the gym. But recently, when I've emphasized long muscle length training through these new bicep exercises in the gym and reducing axial fatigue and stuff like that, I just noticed way better results. And taking another look at the accumulated literature, I was like, okay, now it's really, really obvious that stretch under load is a really, really big deal. Man, it all kind of comes together and makes a lot of sense. So here's how I train my biceps now, and how you might want to take some stuff from this, though don't leave just yet, because at the end of this video, I have recommendations separately for beginners, intermediates, and advanced folks who want to try out this stuff. So the main concept of how I lift now is can be summarized in three things. First, make sure that the tension in your bicep training, or I make sure that the tension in my bicep training is there at long muscle lengths. If I don't get decent tension at long muscle lengths in an exercise, it doesn't mean it's off the table. It means I might try to replace it with an exercise that can accommodate that. I also pick movements that are not only the exposing the muscle in the lengthened position, but are also the toughest in the lengthened position, so that when the muscle gets really close to failure, it's in that lengthened position. It's in that most growth promoting position that you get close to failure, which probably means more growth is had. And there's an objective sense in which you're like, well, I'm failing in the hardest part. That makes a ton of sense. That's easy to track, and so on and so forth. It's failing in the easiest part, which is kind of weird. And you're like, could I have tried harder, etc. And I also try to maximize, good God, I said that backwards. Thank God I corrected myself. I try to minimize my axial fatigue as much as possible. So if I'm standing, I sit. If I'm sitting, I incline. If I'm inclining, I lay down. Not exactly like that, but you guys get the drift. If there's a way to do an exercise which reduces your axial fatigue, go from standing to sitting and sitting to lying down in any capacity, is generally can be a big advantage in your program, especially if you're big and strong and you train your legs and your back, and you can't just piss away axial fatigue into the wind. Although urinating into the wind is fun. If someone's downwind, if it's you that's downwind, it's not so fun. Now, I'm not speaking of personal experience. Of course, I've never urinated in public. Do you believe that? Do you believe that about yourself? Mm-hmm. Some example lifts that I do. We got lying cable curls. So as you can tell, the setup here is you fucking put some dumbbells on your feet so you can have something to press from that you still get tension at the bottom stretch. You lie down on the ground like an animal facing up. You get whatever kind of curl implement is convenient and fun for you and makes your wrists and elbows feel okay. You just jam away. That's really, really good. Incline dumbbell curls, of course, a classic. I would say the lower that incline is, generally the better you feel, the more tension at a stretch. We have the option of free motion curls, of course, which are always great. You can do these with a regular cable stack, but free motion, you have so much control over where you put the arms and where you position the situation. It's really a big benefit. My recommendation of free motion curls is to get the bottom position so that your pulley is roughly at hand length when you drop your hands down, so that the pulley is perpendicular to your hand at the very bottom. And that means you get massive stretch and tension at the same time, and it gets much easier as you curl up, which is the ideal force curve, seemingly, for hypertrophy training. Then I've been messing with some concentration curls, but not Arnold style, Menno Henselman style, in which you lean back on purpose as you're doing them so that you expose yourself to tension on long muscle lengths. It's really, really awesome. And of course, my new patented lying dumbbell curls, or as I like to start calling them from now on, Dr. Mike's smart and makes up exercises of his own, and he's avant-garde, and he's a revolutionary, and isn't he great? Curls. I prefer to use the whole name, otherwise it's rude. Those exercises, give those a shot. They are exercises you can do in the RP Hypertrophy app. There is no avoiding hard training if you want to grow. But if you want to grow the most, your training needs to be hard and smart. RP Hypertrophy app will make sure you're progressing on track, monitoring and adjusting your workout at all times. So for all that work you're doing, you can be sure you're getting the best results. So if you want a bicep specialized program put together, you can do that in there. Absolutely no problem. We have a couple of exercises already, or a couple of programs in that are arms emphasis. So you can sprinkle in your new curl exercises there and give some of these a try. Big reminder, it's not good versus evil. It's not terrible versus ideal. As far as exercise selection, it's good versus better. Barbell curls will slap beef onto your fucking arms, bro. They just will. But you might have a little bit more beef if you use some of these other interesting curl variations. So give those a shot. But before you run away, if you're a beginner, don't run too far. Because my recommendation here for beginners is to stick mostly to multi-joint moves like underhand rows, pull-ups and pull-downs, and upright rows. You can throw in some curls of any kind if you want, but you really would not bother with this SFR nonsense, because that's nonsense that's only really relevant for people of a high training age. You've been training up to about 3 years. Do compound, full range of motion, badass exercises, throw some curls in the mix. There's no right or wrong in any case. Just use good technique, progress your loading slowly, and you'll be 100% fine. You don't hardly even need to do isolations for biceps. For intermediates, you want to try all kinds of curls, because some people really respond amazingly to barbell curls and easy curls. They didn't have, I used to have a time where months on end, easy bar curls were fucking butter, and they worked really well, and I really liked them. So absolutely do all the kinds of curls. These kinds, the new ones that I talked about, the old school ones, try them both and pay attention to the raw stimulus magnitude, like how much oomph do they really give your biceps for a certain number of sets, but also the stimulus to fatigue ratio, like for the oomph, are you really tired? Do your joints hurt? If your joints don't hurt much or at all, you're not really tired, and there's a lot of oomph, that's kind of the golden fleece. As you're an intermediate, you should collect these golden fleece exercises for yourself so that you know which ones work best for you. And then if you're advanced, when you're advanced, my main points for you are twofold. One, consider biasing most of your curls to the stretch position, which pretty much most of these ones that I've shared today do, and find out what typically are the 4 or 5 best stimulus to fatigue ratio variants in curling for you. Stick mostly to those. It could be very different than it is for other people, but you have to always combine general science and theory with your own personal experience to get right in that little middle Venn diagram situation that's amazing for you. And folks, go out there, get big arms, and make some goddamn friends, which is easy when you have big arms. See you guys next time.